Hey everybody, welcome back to Change Your Perspective, Change Your Awareness, Change Your Life. I'm Dr. Michelina, and I am a logotherapist, meaningful life coach, leadership consultant, and somebody in the comments yesterday made me realize that I accidentally recorded on my computer, which is old, guys. It's from 2016, and normally I don't do that. Normally I record in other ways, and I just old habit, forgot. And so I apologize for yesterday's quality, starting our leadership series, right? And so lead to live is what we are talking about right now. It's what we're working on. It is what we are bringing awareness around. We're going to be talking about it all week, and super excited because leadership is the name to my game. I think you can't have a meaningful life if you're not a leader in your life. I think that leadership is influence. And that's, again, John Maxwell's definition, not my own. And I think everybody needs to be a self-leader first, self-mastery, self-discipline, all these things that we don't like to hear about now, but very important. And also, bad leadership is an epidemic. Worse, management is an epidemic. People who are managing versus leading. And so I want to talk a lot about that today. I want to talk about what it looks like to manage versus lead, okay? And so what good leaders do and what bad leaders do versus what good managers do. Well, I don't really love management as a concept. I prefer leadership, obviously. But there are certain things that, sorry, I wanted to look at a couple things because I have lots of notes for you today. So the first things first, when it comes to leadership of any kind of leader in any kind of capacity, right? We talked yesterday about having an I can mentality and we can mentality, we can, and also a collaborative mentality, a courageous mentality. A lot of things that we look around and we don't see a lot of now, right? So one. Two, when it comes to being a leader, more than just of yourself, but a leader of the people, there are some very important things that need to be done, okay? So if you are a leader in your school, your home, your family, your job, your church, any organization, if you're a leader there, these are certain things that you're going to want to be aware of if you deal with people specifically. Now, it is true that you can apply this to yourself as well, okay? So what good leadership looks and feels like is safe, one, consistent, constant, okay? Good leaders are consistent. They are the same all the time. And so we'll talk more about leadership styles over the next couple of little bits, but the authentic leader is my favorite leader because it means you are the same person in your space as you are in anywhere else because you're leading yourself all the time in specific ways. So people, when it comes to leadership, are like the most special is the word, but it's not special. The most important, but also not that. The most precious, that's the word I want, precious resource you have, okay? So your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, your children, your friends, your coworkers, the people in your church with you, like the people. If you are a leader, you are a people person first. Now, I can tell you right now, the reason why so many people are bad at leadership is because they don't like people. They don't know how to deal with people. We are out of balance where people are concerned. We're people pleasing all the time, right? Or we're trying so hard not to people please that we don't please anybody but ourselves. It's a delicate, tricky balance here. Leadership is a delicate, tricky balance. So people remember how they felt around you. Did they feel safe to come to you with things? Often no. If you think about the leaders you've had, if you think about the managers you've had, probably there's a great many of them that you're like, I'd rather die than tell them anything. I know that sounds kind of mean, but I'm sure you've experienced that, right? They'll remember the time that you put with them. There are 4 personal mastery resources, right? Time, energy, attention, and money. As a leader, You have other resources: space, information, and timing. As a leader, you've got 7 things that you're working with here. So if you spend time with people, if you give your energy to people, and people are aware of how much your time means to you and how little of it you have, they remember that. They're like, oh, I remember that time Sally took her lunch hour to sit with me and talk. That's important, intangible leadership skill. There are hard skills that are leadership based and qualities that are leadership, productive leadership things, yes. But also there's a lot of intangibles, and where people are concerned, it is always the intangibles that matter more. This is a super important leadership tip. It is so important. It is the one thing that you can do to be consistent all the time. And it is this: keep your word. Your word is your bond. Say what you mean and mean what you say. If you want to be consistent, if you want to be reliable, if you want to be trustworthy, if you want to be in good leadership, you keep your word no matter what. And on the damned off chance that you can't keep it, you let them know well in advance and you tell them why. And you make the restitutions that need to be made. Right? And so if you do not keep your word, I can already tell you you're a shit leader. Like if you tell your kids, yeah, we'll go for ice cream, and then you never take them for ice cream, you're an awful, awful leader in your family. I can already tell you that. If you tell your girlfriend all the time, like, oh, I'm going to buy you flowers, and you never buy her flowers, you're an awful leader. I can already tell you that. It is the little things in leadership that add up. And this is why people don't keep their word. This is why we've got issues. Politicians are like, oh yeah, make every campaign promise. And then guess what they actually keep? Nothing that doesn't benefit them. And we've got a lot of bad leadership, and then we wonder why, right? This is how people, your constituents, your followers, they know they can count on you. I will tell you this very honestly, the people in my circle know I'm keeping my word. They just do. They know no matter what, it is going to happen. If I say it's going to happen, it's going to happen, because I'm going to work my ass off to ensure that it does, because I said that it would. Or if it doesn't, I'm going to do everything to make the restitution possible. And again, this is all, we'll talk more. There's so much around good leadership, but being human, being repentant is important in that. Like, I am so sorry I botched that, right? I've done that before where someone was like, hey, you said you were going to call me after lunch and you didn't. I had seen them before lunch. And they were like, hey, call me after. And I was like, yeah, sure. I wasn't being intentional, okay? Was not being intentional. And they texted me afterwards. They were like, you said you were going to call. And I was like, and it was rare. It was a weird thing. They were like, what happened? Are you okay? Because it's not a normal thing for me not to do what I say I'm going to do. And it completely slipped my mind. A couple things came up and I was like, I am so sorry. Like, let me make this up to you. I'll take you out to lunch tomorrow. Like, I apologize, right? It's literally accountability. So you want to know about good leadership. Accountability is the number one thing that makes a good leader. An accountable person is going to be a very good leader. Accountability makes leadership. And so, and responsibilities in that, right? Being responsible, but more than that, being accountable means that you take it back on yourself first. And if you want to know why we have so many people who are in crap leadership, it's because people want to pass the buck. People don't want to take accountability for themselves, their actions, their decisions, the things they do, the things they don't do. And you know what it takes to be accountable? Courage. Honesty. Right? It takes these things, these character traits that we don't build anymore, that people do not have anymore, that parents do not teach anymore, and that don't always come natural. I had the benefit of having a wonderful mother who was extraordinarily good at leadership. And she found herself in leadership positions everywhere she went because she was accountable. She is still accountable, reliable, consistent, loving. Like, these are the things that make a good leader. My mom passed it down to me. Thank God. I got the leg up. Right? And so I'm going to pass it to you because we need it more than ever in this generation. I mean, we have so little accountability. We have so little responsibility. We have so little courage. And these are the things that make good leaders. And so let me tell you what it sounds like to be a bad leader. Okay, I made a list for you guys. Think about the leaders in your life, your job, right? Your family, your school. Think about the people who lead you, the people you have to answer to. Your parents, your siblings, your bosses, your church leaders. Unfocused. I could take Joe Biden as an example. His speech is so unfocused. He is the joke of everything, right? Bad leaders are unfocused. They go into a meeting, they don't know what they want to talk about. They have no thoughts in their head. They don't know what they don't know, right? They're emotional. Bad leaders are overly emotional, right? They are not stable. They are unstable, overly emotional. Because usually when you're in emotion, it's a reactive space. It's a non-intentional space, right? Now, there are some leaders, and I've done this too, that use emotion to be intentional and like to demonstrate a point. But 9 times out of 10, bad leadership is emotional. Good leadership is collaborative. It's strategic. It's intentional. Emotions are not intentional. They're the opposite of that. And they have their place. Everything does. Bad leadership is flighty. It is all over the place. It's chaotic. It's just unfocused, flighty energy. Unintentional. Right? Think about your leaders here, guys. Think about if this is you, right? Change your perspective, change your awareness. Are you these things? It means you're not showing up in good leadership. I love you. You're not. Fluctuating. If you're up, down, emotional roller coaster, inconsistent, you should be seeing themes and patterns here. Okay, it's not hard. We should be seeing themes and patterns here. If you are up, down, all around, do the dance. Leadership, not your strong suit, probably. And this one's such a hard one, bad leaders are controlling. Bad leaders are very controlling. It has to be their way. They have to have the final say. They don't know how to let anybody else work. They don't know how to delegate. They are micromanaging all the time. They say like, oh yeah, do it however you want. And then you go and do it. And it's like, no, why'd you do it like that? Right? A lot of control around bad leaders. A lot of control around bad leaders. I've been guilty of this before, but bad leaders are late a lot. If you are chronically and continually late, you're probably not in good leadership. I will say that was a pitfall of mine when I was teaching. Like there were times I would roll up to my class at the time it was to teach. Like it was 7:20 and I'm like pulling up in my car at 7:18. And like my kids knew. They like opened the door for me because I parked illegally on the side of the building, taught my first class, and then like drove to the parking lot. It was bad leadership. And I mean, I did a lot of things in leadership that were in teaching that were not great leadership. Got me in trouble. You know, I got myself in a lot of trouble when I was teaching because of bad leadership, because of things I did that were not good leadership. And I will be damned if I do those again because I know how much trouble it got me in, right? The mentality of the thing, more so than anything. This is another one that, and why, guys, why being late is such a problem. And I could literally go into an 8-month course on all of this. I'm giving you a high level overview. If you actually want to work through this or any of this, you're going to want to comment below. You're going to want to find me on my social medias. You're going to want to like try to work with me one-on-one because these are all, there's a lot here. These are all things that are, there's actionable concrete things you can do to show up differently. But the reason why being late is such an issue is because it means you don't value or respect the people that you're meeting up with. You don't value their time. That's bad leadership. If you are a leader, you are supposed to value their time and your own. Because time is the only resource we have that we cannot produce more of. You can produce more money, you can get more attention, you can get more energy, you cannot make more time. Okay, we got a finite amount of it. Time is important in leadership. It's important in leadership. wow, I really could go on for a long time, guys. Bad leadership, so easy to spot. But yes, so bad leadership also lacks boundaries. If you are not comfortable with boundary setting, if you're like, boundary, what's that, right? You're probably in poor leadership. And I should be saying poor, right? I don't like to say bad. I don't like to say bad and good, because it's like serving or not serving, productive or not productive. That's usually the language I prefer to use. But you're in poor leadership. You're in not productive, not serving leadership when you lack boundaries. As somebody who has lacked boundaries, who's gotten too close to people that they shouldn't have, I will tell you, bad leadership comes from no boundaries. It's not good, guys. It's not good. And so learning boundaries and implementing boundaries is a skill that takes time to do it. It takes knowing yourself and being comfortable with yourself and authentic and secure, right? These are all things that are easily said and not always easily done. So it took me a while to learn how to implement boundaries. It really did. And I realized something about boundaries is it's a two-step process. It's different. The first step is knowing the boundary. It's a couple steps of the boundary setting process, but knowing the boundary, stating the boundary, and then reinforcing the boundary, or rather enforcing and then reinforcing. So boundary setting is a whole ass process, right? Poor leadership doesn't know anything about that process. Poor leadership doesn't set boundaries. Poor leadership lets people just come and go as it needs to be. And it's like, that's not going to work, right? That's why, like, one of the first things that you need when you're coming up with, like, being an entrepreneur is like a handbook. Like, you need to have parameters around every single person that I hire on any company or any business. I have set parameters around what their job looks like, because otherwise it's too easy. And you've seen this before, probably. It's way too easy for it to be like, oh, well, can you also do this thing? And it's like, well, let me check my job requirements. It's not in there. I'm not doing it. Thank you, though. Aha, boundary setting, right? Good leaders set boundaries. They have a lot of inner knowledge. They have a lot of knowing. Poor boundaries usually comes from a poor knowledge of self. We'll talk more about that. Speaking of that, poor leadership, poor communication. If you do not communicate effectively, you are likely in poor leadership. That is 9 times out of 10. And if you can't communicate effectively, it's probably because you don't know yourself or the subject matter well enough to communicate on it. Poor leadership, right? Poor leadership, all about the self in a very unhealthy way. It's like, it's a self-centered type of an energy, right? Whereas, like, it is a good thing. A good leader will use themselves as an example. They will be accountable. They will be self-aware, self-master, right? There's good things about the self. But what we do is more self-centered, right? Bad leadership, poor leadership management is self-centered. It's all about how good I am, and everybody else is subpar. That's poor leadership. That's poor leadership. When it's all about the self in that kind of negative, unhealthy way, it's poor leadership, right? Poor leadership right here. I'm just going to list it all out for you guys. I'm going to be talking about it all in depth over the next, when you shy away from conflict. So many people are in very poor leadership because they don't know how to have healthy conversation, because everything that's a confrontation feels like a conflict, feels like something I need to fight, fly, or freeze from. And it's like, that's not true. All you need to do is sit here and let's have a chat-see about it so I can understand you and you can understand me and we can move on. Right? Good leadership knows that conflict is really just collaboration. Right? There's nothing inherently dangerous in conflict. It's not really that big of a deal, because it doesn't need to be a conflict. It just needs to be a chat. Let's talk about it. Right? So people who shy away from conflict, who shy away from communicating, they're in bad leadership. this does have a lot to do with if you're in if you know your attachment style. I don't know if you know anything about it, but dismissive avoidance, fearful avoidance, not great leaders, because they avoid everything. Great leaders can't avoid anything. You can't avoid things as a leader. You have to go into it, right? That's why you need a can-do mentality. That's why you need courage, because you are a leader. So you gotta lead, right? You gotta lead. And so what really, one of the big hallmarks of poor leadership is not wanting to actively engage in difficult things, right? And so, and again, I say difficult, if you look at it as difficult, it is. But like for me, there's not a lot of difficulty. Nothing's really that hard. We're just going to work through it. We're just going to talk about it, right? Poor leaders are not specific. Okay, they are not specific. Poor leaders are not specific. They are very haphazard, can do whatever. It goes back to that like chaotic energy, that unfocused, that not knowing energy. And then another one, like I said, there's a lot here. We got a lot where leadership is concerned, of ways it can be done poorly. And it really doesn't take much to do it well. Intentionality, reliability, responsibility, accountability, honesty. Doesn't take much to do it well, but so much easier to do it poorly. Leaders who assign things and never look at them, right? That was something that drove me crazy when I was teaching. And I told my students, I was like, guys, I will never assign you something that I deem busy work. Like, there's no such thing in my world as busy work. Ain't nobody got the time for that. Okay, so if I'm assigning you something, it's because I need it done, because it's actually beneficial for you to understand the material, right? And if you've ever had a manager, not a good leader, a manager who's like assigned you a project and then like reneged on it, or like they tried to, you tried to like show them a document and they're like, oh yeah, send it to me. And then it's like, hey, did you look at that? And it's like, oh no, I never got around to it. Or like they don't look at their emails, or they don't look at their text. Like, that's to poor communication. If they don't look at the things that are a requirement of their job, they're not going to be in good leadership, right? And so, and that again goes everywhere. It's not just your profession. Like, if you are a parent and you never look at your kids' work, you're not in good leadership. Don't send them to school then. Like, if they have documents and you need to look at them or sign them or be aware of what your kid's doing, you're not in good leadership, right? And I'm just making up an example that isn't having to do with profession, because a lot of us, this is the thing I find all the time, we're really good at being good leaders in our profession, but we are crap leaders in our personal life. We are crap leaders in our personal life. I have a friend who is always seeing this, and he's like, how is this person a doctor, but they're a complete mess in their personal life? Inauthentic leadership. We're going to talk all about authentic leadership in a couple of days. Authentic leadership is my favorite leadership style, naturally. And so I say naturally because that's what I wrote my dissertation on. that's authentic leadership is my jam. So I'm biased toward it. Any leadership is better than no leadership. If you're leading like what I just listed off over the last 20 minutes, you are in poor leadership. Please contact me. Or if you're not ready to work with a coach one-on-one yet, can be a little pricey, then just go and listen to some leadership. Go on LinkedIn and follow leadership development. Like, go do something. Because being a leader is like the number one most valuable skill you can have to change your life. You want to change your perspective, change your awareness, change your life, become a better leader. Everything that I talk about on this channel is to that effect, because leadership is my game. And there's a lot that goes into choosing to be a good leader. And it is a choice most of the time. It doesn't come naturally for all of us. So I will list these down below so that you have them, so that it's a little bit more formulaic. I won't put the times on it. Someone else can do that if you're interested. But yeah, bad leadership is a really easy thing to see and to feel and to call out, right? That's why our president gets called out on it all the time. Like, he's an awful leader. I don't care if you like him. I don't care if you're a Democrat or not. Like, he's just not a good leader. Thankfully, we've got a system of checks and balances in place so that the president is more of like a flagship and less of the like full-on leader. He's got a whole cabinet, a whole bunch of things, but like at the end of the day, he's not the leader that this country needs, let's be honest. And so why? Well, because he's unfocused, he's flighty, he's inconsistent, he fluctuates, he's controlling, right? He's got bad communication, all the things that are just hallmarks of poor leadership. So I hope that you're going to enjoy this series. Thank you to whoever commented. I hope this quality is better. I apologize for that. Like, I went back and looked and I was like, oh my God. I take these live though, so I can't re-record it. It'll be a whole different chat, you know? So we just kind of have to make do with it and fix it moving forward. I apologize. So hope that that is interesting to you, helpful to you, helping you change your perspective, change your awareness, change your life. Like, subscribe, comment below, tell your friends, share this series, and I will see you guys on the next video.